Are you looking for a podcast that is beholden to no one except you? You have found patriots willing to take on the establishment. Welcome to Cracker Culture, with your hosts Smokin Joe and Ford O'Connell. We're taking names and kicking ass. Join us as we confront the issues of politics and expose the corruption. Many of our politicians are opportunists. We intend to keep you informed. It's time to hold them accountable. Join us. We are not trying to be anyone's voice, just trying to help you be your own. We love you, Florida. You can find us at Smokin Joe YouTube, Cracker Culture YouTube, and most streaming platforms. Love, peace, and gator grease.
You know, over these past 4 years, we've seen major challenges for the people of our state, for the citizens of the United States, and above all, for the cause of freedom. We saw freedom in our very way of life, and so many other jurisdictions in this country wither on the vine. Florida held the line. We chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. Florida was a refuge of sanity when the world went mad. We stood as a citadel of freedom for people across this country and indeed across the world.
All right. Welcome to Cracker Culture, the podcast for real Floridians. Mr. Ford O'Connell is with me hosting today's show, and I'm Smokin Joe. Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. Farmer Joe's is located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Farmer Joe's is currently under repair, but they will be opening soon for all of your grocery needs. Guaranteed the greatest store in all of Lee County. Ford, everybody's talking Trump, and that's kind of the story with him announcing to run in 2024.
Yeah, that is absolutely the story. And last night at Mar-a-Lago, he made his announcement. And I think, he is still the favorite. He is the head of the Republican Party. But I do think that when all is said and done, the eventual Republican nominee is going to be a Floridian. And the only question is whether it's Trump or DeSantis.
Well, let's see what he said to start it off here.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Yeah, he was ready to put it out there. And, a lot of people has complained and talked about, Trump was acting more presidential. I just think he's comfortable. He's pretty much feels like he can coast this one, I believe.
Well, I think he has his 2024 game face on, and he's laser focused on issues and drawing a contrast with Joe Biden, particularly when he's talking about border security, inflation, gas prices. These are things that affect every American, regardless of political party, regardless of sex, regardless of race. So I think he understands that he's going to have a little bit more of an issue focused, and what it took to win in 2016 is going to be very, very different in 2024. And I think, look, he's going to set the pole for all the other Republican candidates, no matter how many get in or don't get in.
Yeah, I agree with that. And another thing, I watched how DeSantis is handling all this of, Trump's bashing DeSantis. And, I don't think Trump's got any bad feelings toward Ron DeSantis. And Ron said, guys, it's just noise. I'm not even focused in on it. I think Ron DeSantis handled it well. And I think Trump's just being Trump.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that eventually we're going to have a full Donnybrook, if you will, in the primary. But I think that right now, in the wake of election night, what Republicans are trying to talk about is delivering on results, providing a vision for America, because what's going on under Joe Biden is absolutely abysmal. And I think that eventually, when we get into that primary, you may see more punches thrown, But that's, Republican primary politics. I think right now they want to not only identify the problems, but tell you why the Republican Party, particularly Donald Trump at this stage, is better for the solutions you and your family are looking for.
Yeah, look. I'm all for a Trump win, a Trump 2024 election. I think it would be great. However, I love Ron DeSantis, and I don't want nobody to think that I'm not pro DeSantis, because I want him for my governor for a couple of years. I don't want to give him up just yet. But that being said, I noticed that Ivanka Trump said that she wasn't going to get involved in politics this year. But I don't think. But she said, I love my dad, but I'm not getting involved. Do you think all of the just the left's push to try to just defame the Trump family, you think that's why Ivanka's stepping back this time?
Look, politics is unfortunately a very nasty sport, and I think that essentially Ivanka Trump is someone who wants to be more known as a private citizen and raising her family. But, the Trump family is very strong, and if she's called on to help or to ask her to do something, she's going to do it, but she's just not going to have that kind of up-face role that we saw in the 2016 to 2020, where she was really part of the face of the campaign. So I think a lot of this is still in flux. I think what you're seeing here is Trump laying down a vision and really contrasting with Joe Biden. The reason why this matters is in 2020, Joe Biden got away with bloody murder because essentially you had COVID, but you also had somebody talking about a hypothetical presidency. Now you've got somebody who's got a terrible record on inflation, on gas prices, on crime, on securing the southern border, you name it. This is a very different race. And I think that Trump is adjusting to that and being very aware of that.
Yeah, again, I know that when he ran previously, he was very jovial and he likes to cut up. And, I know that personality because I've got that same personality, but, he was very relaxed. And, I think that it just shows that, you've met Trump in person. He's very human, unlike what you see publicly. What he is privately is very different. So.
Yeah, look, that's exactly right. I'll be honest with you. Even sitting in the Roosevelt room with him during meetings in the White House, I will tell you, he is one of the funniest guys I've ever met, and he has a very interesting way of presenting problems to the American people where they may not connect the dots, whether it's with the Chinese on trade or whether it's on gasoline. Look, I still think that this is his game to finish. But again, if Ron DeSantis becomes a nominee, I'll be extremely happy as well. I think that whoever the nominee is, they should support one another. I just hope that nominee is a Floridian. And I'll just tell you, if it's Trump, then great, we got DeSantis for 4 more years. If it's DeSantis and we still have a Floridian, and I think that Florida is the center of the Republican universe. And as Ron said, we held the line. Now it's time to take that and deliver what's been going on in Florida to the rest of the country.
I totally agree with that. Let's go over here to Kari Lake. Now, is it even feasible that Hobbs beat Lake? How is that even possible? It's just incredible to me.
Look, I think that this is one where the Democrats did extremely well in the 2022 midterms was early in what we call mail-in voting. It's a little bit different than what we have in Florida, but this is where the Democrats really have us, and we've got to catch up. Look, we talk about voter fraud all the time. We talk about different things that they do. Unfortunately, we're not in a position to change those rules in Arizona or in Nevada because there's 50 different rules. Republicans have to learn to play the game. I'll give you a great example. In 2018 in California, where they have ballot harvesting, they have every kind of trick in the book. Republicans got shellacked. In 2020, they learned to play the game. And now in 2022, we took back the House because of how strong we ran in California. We adapted to the game. We have to start banking those votes early. And unfortunately, it's a shame. And I'm really sad because Kari Lake is somebody who desperately needs to be part of the Republican Party going forward.
What is the chances that Trump taps her as his vice president?
I don't think he's going to tap her as his vice president, but as you know, with Trump, everything is subject to change. But I don't think he's going to do that. But I think she's somebody who has a place in Republican politics, whether it's as a commentator right now, unless something dramatically changes in Arizona. But I think she has a future for Republicans going forward, because I'll be honest with you, her communication skills are second to none. And frankly, out west, we need more of those.
Yeah, she is. Look, she's a firecracker. I've said that before. Every time I watch her, she impresses me. And, you know, looking at that race, looking at Pennsylvania, is this the most unbelievable results you've seen in the midterm election so far? Is the Kerry Lake or the Fetterman? What's the most unbelievable turnout you've seen?
I think the three things that were disappointing was the fact that Fetterman prevailed. Obviously, he's a stroke victim. I mean, people talk about candidate quality. That's insane. The reason why Fetterman won is because the Democrats banked 600,000 votes prior to that disastrous debate. That's something where I keep talking about the mechanics of early voting and mail-in voting. We got to catch up to the Democrats and beat them at their own game. Obviously, Arizona and Nevada. In Nevada, we won the governorship. We needed to win the Senate, too. And in Arizona, we certainly needed to at least win the governorship with Kerry Lake, because these are states that we're going to have to fight in 2024 and deliver and win.
Well, how likely do you think it is that Herschel Walker is going to win when it comes down to a runoff in Georgia?
He's got a very good chance to win, but this is an all-hands-on-deck moment. Every Republican needs to be barnstorming in Georgia and needs to be pushing resources to help Herschel Walker. I will tell you, as ridiculous as Raphael Warnock sounds, he's not an easy out, because he's the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. That's Martin Luther King's church. That gives him a lot of credit with a lot of African Americans in Georgia. And what Herschel needs to do is have Brian Kemp, Donald Trump, whomever, come and vouch for him, because I think the only reason why we're in a runoff is because people were not as comfortable with Herschel as a political brand as they were with him as a football brand.
I believe that's the fact. Well, now you go down to Texas. I really like Abbott, and I think that Abbott done a good thing when he said he's going to declare an invasion on the Texas border, and that's right off of what Kerry Lake said she was going to do all along. I think he picked that up, and I think that'd be great.
Look, I've been screaming about this forever, about invoking the invasion clause. I'm glad that Greg Abbott finally did it, and I think it's important for people to understand. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. It hurts the migrants themselves, not to mention the pandemic of fentanyl trafficking. It sucks off the social safety net, and it increases crime. No other country in the entire world allows what's going on our southern border with Joe Biden. It is time that someone puts a foot down, because the Democrats and the corporate media, they don't care. Okay? Right. And that's a real problem. And I'm glad someone's going to put a foot down. My only question is, I hope that others do it too, other border state governors. But unfortunately, you're going to have a Democrat most likely in Arizona. So fat chance on that front.
Yeah, I really hope that – I like what Abbott says. I want to see him enact it. And hopefully we'll see the fruits of his labor.
If I have one knock against Abbott, though, Joe, it's the fact that if you told me way back when COVID began that Ron DeSantis would have the stones to stand up to the medical establishment and the media, particularly in a state like ours where 1/4 of the people are over the age of 65, and Greg Abbott would kind of shrink and hide behind him, I would have been a little bit worried. I honestly think that Greg Abbott's doing the right thing, but I think he's atoning for his being a little late on the call when it came to COVID.
Yeah, well, let's move on back down to Southwest Florida, where me and you both reside. One of the most controversial races in Collier County was between Kelly Lichter and Jen Mitchell. Rightfully so, Kelly Lichter was victorious, as was Jerry Rutherford and Tim Mosier. It looks like an American first very America first board for Collier County. How likely are we to see substantial changes with Kelly on this board backed by other conservatives?
Well, look, I think that Kelly, Jerry, and Tim are going to push the board in the right direction. I do think that this is not something that you can sleep on. I think the next cycle, we need to challenge the other incumbents on that board as well. This has to be an ongoing process, but I like where it's going. I think that Kelly Lichter understands where we need to be. I just think that she's going to need some more allies along with Jerry and Tim.
Oh, you're absolutely right. My next guest we're going to bring on now is going to be Tara Jenner. Ms. Jenner is a constitutional conservative. She's a United States Air Force veteran, obtaining the rank of major before returning to civilian life. She is a self-proclaimed recovering attorney who served counsel in many aspects of our great military. Tara is here to encourage membership in the REC and explain the importance of the involvement on how to join the REC. Tara, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Tara, me and Ford, we've been following the local REC pretty hard to bring out here. You want to expose to the public.
Well, right now, one of the things that we're facing here in Lee County is we're facing an REC that is ineffective on so many levels that it's not even funny. Primarily, the biggest problem is the current board does not understand that this is not a board-driven organization, but a membership-driven organization, and they don't follow their own rules and guidelines. There are certain hierarchies of the documents and the guidelines that we need to follow. And if we just do that, then you just let the chips fall where they may, depending upon how things go. But we have the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution, the state statutes that dictate how the local and the state Republican Executive Committee should be run. And then underneath that, you have a hierarchy of other documents, which includes the RPOF Constitution, the rules and guidelines, and then the model constitutions. And then lastly, your Robert Rules of Order. And the problem is the current board is dictating that as if they're the ones in charge, and they're not recognizing that all of these documents begin with those famous words, we the people. And the REC is supposed to be membership driven, membership led, elected individuals who are precinct committee men and women who drive the train, and then the board executes based on what the membership determines through proper votes and protocols. And we're not seeing that. In addition to that, we're also running against an establishment situation where we think, because it's kind of hard to tell, about 1,100 precinct positions in Lee County. For every 1,000 people per precinct, there's one man and one woman designated as a committee person. So if you have 4,100 people in a particular precinct, you get 5 men and 5 women that run that precinct. So we think there's about 1,100 in Lee County. And up until about 6 months ago, there were close to only about 125 of those billets filled. They've done a lousy job of actually getting those billets filled. And those billets need to be filled so that we can get the vote out. We can encourage people to register. We can get people to the polls. We can assist them with information on policies, procedures, and everything else. Just in the last several months, they've added a bunch of other people. A lot of that is because people like me and also people that are running on a slate that I'm running with for the upcoming elections this December to replace the board, hopefully. We have Leslie Jander, who's running for our secretary, who's been working as a secretary both at her church and at a local community organization. Spot on, very good about taking notes without doing editorializing. And we have JD or Dave McGee, who's running for treasurer, who has years of experience with IBM. He's a 6-year Marine Corps officer veteran who has the ability to be able to be involved in fiscal responsibility and integrity. And the 4 of us, with a backing of a bunch of other people who've been grassroots and working on this for years, have decided we need to get people involved. So we've been encouraging people to join the REC, But the establishment crowd now realize the numbers game is going against them, so they've been doing it too. And just
Well, that's what I was about to say. The Lee County REC is fractured. I mean, that's a fracture. Right now, it's fractured. And I've seen what you and Michael Thompson and several others are trying to do there. But can you explain one thing to me? Saturday, you had a meeting. Can you explain the swearing in of a political consultant, as in Terry Miller, last Saturday? Has everyone there forgot about 2014 when Connie Mack and Trudy Williams called for his resignation and all the issues that happened with Porter Goss?
You know what? Even more importantly than that, and yes, that is a concern. But the bigger concern that I have is the people that were sworn in on Saturday, or let me rephrase that, the people who were purportedly sworn in on Saturday were supposed to be 64 people. One of the names that they read out was a guy by the name of Brendan Leslie, who used to go by the Florida conservative voice, but I think he dropped the conservative voice because I think he realized he was getting called out on that one just a little too much. He wasn't
I'm not real
physically
familiar with him. I don't think I've ever heard much of him, but okay.
well, we know his face because he's been a bad player. He wasn't physically there to be sworn in. And because of that, it made us all go, wait a minute, what's going on here? And we talked to Bill Ribble, who was the non-prevailing candidate for hospital board. And he acknowledged that there were 4 people that were not physically present of the 64 names that they read out. But we had somebody take panoramic photographs of the people that were sworn in, that were physically there. And we think, based on our account, there were only 44 people there. So where did the 20 people come from whose names were read out? And we can't even get a list of the members of the REC from the current board. They won't give us that information.
For what they done Saturday was right out of your playbook. You know, they did. They backfired it on these grassroots candidates that were hoping to do the same thing. And they brought in a bunch of people that was strictly for establishment candidates. How did they circumvent this, Ford?
Well, they've been the establishment's been controlling the Lee County board basically ever since Terry Miller resigned, when they were still in control then. And unfortunately, Tara's making a great point here. The Lee County REC is the worst Republican executive committee in Southwest Florida. It's poorly run, and it's run for the benefit of about a handful of people who we can all name. And unfortunately, here's the problem. This is the heyday of Lee County and Florida politics. We, the people's voice, is not being heard, the people from Lee County, the citizens and constituents. And unfortunately, the same cabal is regenerating again. And if you don't put a stop to it, nobody's going to have a say, and we're going to go right back to the status quo of Lee County politics, which means Terry Miller runs his own fiefdom.
It's even worse than that, because all of these people who are under Terry Miller, and the last time I counted, it was like 22 individuals who had him as a campaign manager. They were all whispering in Ron DeSantis's ear, telling him who he should endorse, who he should appoint in interim positions, and so forth. And they were all singing the same tune. And I hate to say it, this is right out the Democrat playbook. They all go for the one thing. They push it. They push this agenda. And everyone thinks it must be the truth because they're hearing it over and over again. And I don't fault DeSantis on this, because he's got to delegate to a certain degree. He's got to rely to a certain degree on the people in the area. But he really needs to hear from the people here in Lee County. We have now on our policy, based on the referendum that was passed, we're going to be having an elected superintendent. And Terry Miller is going to own that position as well if we don't do something about it. And we've seen a similar problem occur down in Bonita Springs, where a gentleman was running for re-election for his position in the fire department, perfectly qualified, years of experience. I think it was a $45 million budget. He was backed by everyone except for the union. And the union pulled in a landscaper who actually won the election because they wanted to control him and that $45 million budget.
Well, Terry Miller, now because you got a couple key players. We keep bringing up the key players. Terry Miller is kind of like the pivot man on the whole deal. Now, if you look at this, now, like you said a while ago, people keep saying things to make it sound true. There's a lot of rumors and speculation going around. One that I cannot currently tell who told me this, but it's a rumor that's going around that a seated board member was contacted by Terry Miller or Terry Miller's camp and told who to promote for the chair of the school board. Now, tell me that's ethical. Connie Mack said it best when he said that Terry Miller's actions are clearly unethical. That was what Connie Mack before said. And how is there any ethics to that camp calling a seated school board member, somebody that's going to remain on the board, and tell them, hey, you promote this person for chair because they'll do what we need?
Well, it's kind of frightening when you think about it, because Terry Miller is in a position where he can influence a lot of people. And one of the ways that he has done that as campaign manager for now seated or soon to be seated board person, Jada Langford Fleming, he set up a PAC called Just the Facts. I called it Pack of Lies personally. And he promoted this whole misinformation campaign against Denise Nystrom, claiming that she was a Democrat, which wasn't true. In fact, anyone who'd ever been to any of the board meetings saw that she was diametrically opposed on CRT, SEL, LGBTQ issues, and so many other things with the Democrat who endorsed her. And the only reason the Democrat endorsed her was because the Democrat recognized that Denise had more qualifications and skills and was willing to fight fraud and corruption, which, of course, anyone who's under Terry Miller is not necessarily going to do it.
Well, it's reported, and he's upset about these numbers being exposed, but it's reported that he spent over $300,000 alone against Denise Nystrom, and he also, that same PAC also went against Kelly Lichter to promote a liberal. The only liberal that PAC supported was Jen Mitchell.
And he used the exact same terminology in his attack on her, claiming that Ron DeSantis refused to endorse them, when in fact refusal is an overt affirmative action rather than a passive action, which was he just didn't endorse anyone at all in either of those two races. There's a big difference between those two. And that's where ethics, morality, and appropriateness comes into play. You're really skirting the rules there, and it just makes you feel, ugh.
Well, they come after you for it. They come after you too for it.
Exactly. Look, Lee County, we talk about the swamp in Washington, D.C., bureaucratic corruption, insider trading, cronyism. We got it in Lee County, and in Lee County, it's so bad, it's actually spilling over into Collier and Charlotte. And unfortunately, most Lee County Republicans have no idea that any of this is going on. This board that Tara's talking about not only tells you who can run, they pick the primary winners, and then they tell you if you actually speak up and say someone's more qualified, that you need to sit down. They are running a totalitarian government under the guise of the Lee County Republican Executive Committee. And if somebody doesn't stand up, it's going to get worse. And unfortunately, because of Governor DeSantis and because of the outsized importance that Lee County now has in Tallahassee, these same criminals are going to get away with influencing state policy beyond Lee County. And if we don't put a foot down, Florida is eventually going to be worse off for it, not to mention so will all of Southwest Florida.
Well, a year ago at the school board meeting, when they held their election for the chair and the vice chair of the school board, I was actually dragged out because I called a point of order, which you're allowed to do based on procedural rules. And I was literally dragged out. And what I did was I actually did a non-compliance thing. I told them the reason why I wanted to speak. Under state statute, it's my contention that the position of chair and vice chair is more than a ministerial duty, because it does allow that particular person an opportunity to be when you have a split vote, like three to three, because we have somebody who has to recuse themselves, they get to have basically a second vote for the tiebreaker, much like the vice president does in the Senate. They have the ability to determine what goes on the ballot, not on the ballot, on the agenda, and which type of meeting a particular topic gets to be placed under, which dictates public comment. They also have the added option of adding additional people to different community and committees, which directly influences ultimately action items. And we have the authority and the right to speak on action items. So my contention was we should have the authority to speak on the precursor to those action items. And when they called me out of order, I offered the opportunity to sit, and they declined that. They told me I had to leave. And I literally held my hands out. It was not me, by the way. It was the Holy Spirit that told me to say, you can touch me, because that's not normally who I am. I'm usually going to fight back. And I just remained seated. So I ended up going out on my knees and my backside. I didn't use any inflammatory language. I didn't call them names, although I would like probably to have done so. I tried to keep it above board. And currently, I'm in the process of trying to negotiate a settlement with the school district on this, because unfortunately, a lot of people see me as being a troublemaker and a bad player, when in fact, what I was doing was trying to stand up for the rights of the people that were being usurped by our very school district.
I was actually there. I actually spoke at that meeting, and I seen them drag Tara out. I was shocked. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. And when she did, she offered to sit down, and they wasn't having it. She was just, you're out of here. And I mean, I'm like, I couldn't, it unbelievable, because I figured I'd be dragged out next.
Interestingly enough, I think it was 2015 or 2016, an identical fact pattern, with the exception of the dragging out part, occurred in Collier County. And now Collier County does allow public comment prior to the nominations and election of the chairperson and the vice chair in their school district. And this goes back to what you were saying about who's going to be the vice chair and who's going to be the chairperson. The whole reason they're maneuvering on that is because it is a position of power and influence, and directly impacts ultimately action items that come before the board and the abilities for us to be able to proceed forward with integrity. And
well,
so
you got a board that's controlled, like this board's going to be controlled by outside sources. There's no doubt about this. They're going to protect the vendors that's friends of theirs. I mean, do you think they'll ever give, that school board there will ever give us a forensic audit, especially with the new players involved?
I seriously doubt it, but I'm going to do a call to action here for anyone who's watching this, that on Tuesday, if I haven't been able to broker this settlement agreement where they allow us to have public comment prior to the election and nomination of the chairperson, that other people, lots of people, stand up and demand that opportunity to be heard before that vote takes place. Now, grant you, they can ignore us all, but at least it sure would make a statement. But one person standing up doesn't accomplish it. And this is one of the things that they love to do during the pandemic. They put those of us that were not willing to wear a mask in a back room so that we weren't seen. And if you go back to the civil rights movement, if they had limited us to a group of 5 people and you had to stay 6 feet apart, the impact would have been negligible, and we would never have seen the civil rights movement accomplish all the things that it did for an equal playing ground for everybody to start with in our country. And so we need to actually stand up as a group of people. And the same thing at the REC. We're seeing a couple of individuals that are calling points of order when we're dealing with violations of the rules and the procedures, or when individuals on the dais are disparaging the reputation of individuals like they have Denise Nystrom. We're calling points of order, but the chairperson is refusing to acknowledge the point of order. And if the chairperson refused to acknowledge the point of order, then you can't question the chair's decision and have a vote on it. And we need people to stand up when there's a point of order, we need 10, 20, 30, 40 people going, there's a point of order. You need to address that. And we have a right then to be able to respond to that and debate it and vote on it. And they're not doing that because numbers control, numbers make a difference. And we need to stand united on this. And unfortunately, when we don't, it makes people like me who spoke out last year look like I'm a troublemaker and a rabble rouser. It makes the few people that speak out at the REC look like troublemakers and rabble rousers. And those that are in charge paint us that way as to disparage our reputation and diminish our efficacy in the eyes of people that are less informed and don't understand how the rules and the procedures should go. And then we're seen as the bad player and they're seen as the good guys.
Well, I think what's important here, Joe, is to remember that the Lee County Republican Executive Committee the board is supposed to serve the members of the REC. It's not supposed to support the money interests of the board itself, and the board is basically shutting it down. It's a cancerous cabal. That's why it needs to be removed, and it needs to represent we the people, the members of the Lee County REC, and that's not what's happening. And unfortunately, there's a crossover between the Lee County REC and who's eventually going to be running the school board. Yeah. This is what we talk about when we're talking about Terry Miller. The members of the Lee County REC board have their hooks into every other thing that goes on in Lee County. And if you want a better day in Lee County, then you have to remove that board, put someone else in there, follow the rules, because this is the arm of the Florida Republican Party in Lee County. And therefore, if it is sick and it does not work, then Lee County does not work.
Look, folks, the truth is if you ain't going to fight for it, you ain't going to get it. And I mean, I appreciate Tara bringing out what they're trying to do at the REC. Currently, I said it in the beginning, that REC's fractured. And until you stand up and you prevent people that are going to have ulterior motives, let's say in the REC, and they're going to come in and they're going to, if they get in positions of power in the REC, then they're going to favor the candidates that's paying them to favor them. So we've got to really, I think Tara and the rest of the group is doing a good job trying to change the situation at the REC. Tara, go ahead and tell us how can people contact you and figure out what we're going to get to with this, how they can get in touch with you and join?
Well, it's a little late right now to be involved in the REC, to be able to vote, which is having their reorganization meeting on December 10th. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't join. Joining now will make a difference because we need to have those positions filled so that we can get the vote out. We can vet good candidates. We can encourage people. We need our ground game going immediately. We don't need to wait until the end of the year or in 2 years and then just go, oh, well, we dropped the ball. We're just going to have to deal with what we've got. So the best way to reach me, and I put this out there, I don't care. My phone number is 239-218-4307. That's 239-218-4307. Best way to reach me, though, text me there so that I have your information in writing. I can respond to you and get you the documents you need to become a member of the REC. And you can also email me at libertylady2021@gmail.com. Just put in the subject REC membership questionnaire or information, anything of that nature. We have a Google Drive. We will send you the information, which will not only include the documents you need to have in order to fill out to become a member, but a receipt letter so that when you hand deliver these to the REC, you can get someone to say they got the documents, because we've had a lot of documents missing. And we also have in this Google Drive the rules of procedures, the model constitution, all the information you need. We don't want to hide the ball, because the more you know, the more you can actually assert your rights and hold the board accountable and know how to actually do that. We've got that on a Google Drive so that if there's any forms that are updated, you have the most current version. What we're recommending people do is print out 2 copies of everything and have all of them notarized, submit one and keep the other one on hand so that if it gets lost, you can bring in a new form on the day that you're supposed to be sworn in. We need numbers because we need to get the ground game going, but we also need numbers because there are so many things going on that we're looking for the membership to share their ideas in order to put forth resolutions.
Well, we appreciate you sharing this information with us, Tara. We'll have you back on another time, but keep up the good fight. We appreciate everything y'all doing.
And if I may, just the DeSantis-Trump thing, I'd love Trump. He can run for either position as far as I'm concerned. Let's keep DeSantis, my personal opinion, for 4 years. I'd love to see that because I think, and based on the Constitution, our governor actually has more authority that's truly authorized than that of the president. And when DeSantis then runs for president down the line, let's have Trump as governor here in Florida. I wouldn't mind that one at all.
Thanks, Tara. You have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Did you see that Mitch McConnell's been reelected as Republican Senate leader?
No, I didn't see that.
He beat Rick Scott. Just letting you in.
Oh, good. I'm glad you told. Well, that was Tara Jenner, Liberty Lady. She really is a patriot. I mean, Tara's a patriot. One of the things, Tara's also was a JAG attorney. So, you know, I think that you always, and you're going to keep professing your case until a judge says, you know, somebody objects, the judge sustains it with her. But
I'll tell you this: if every conservative activist in Southwest Florida had just 1/10 of the drive and the stick-to-itiveness that Tara has, we'd have driven all the swamp creatures out of Southwest Florida, and we'd be running and humming like a machine. I'll tell you, she's a bulldog, and she's someone who is important to listen to because I'm going to tell you, she's smart as a whip too.
Yeah, and bro, she was at everywhere that they had a precinct where they were voting. You looked in Estero. She was out the rec center in Estero every day, and I mean, without fail. I mean, she's a warrior, that's for sure.
That's absolutely right. And look, you know, she is really the definition of activism, and that's my whole point. If everybody else would just pay 1/10 as much attention as she does, we'd be able to monitor our own in Southwest Florida and get rid of the cronyism.
Yeah. Now, you was just talking to me, and you told me that my man Rick Scott, who lives right down here in Naples, got defeated by Schumer for the House. Is that? Tell me how.
Apparently, unfortunately, swamp creature Mitch McConnell is going to return as the Republican leader in the United States Senate. I'll be totally honest with you. I didn't think that Rick Scott had a shot because, again, this isn't about who the better candidate is. This is about who can dole all the money around when re-election time comes. And Mitch McConnell was going to win. What I just would have liked to have seen would have been a few more concessions from Mitch McConnell when it comes to being able to bring bills to the floor when Republicans are going to be in a minority, because Mitch McConnell needs to understand that the Democrats are going to try to shove judges down our throat left, right, and center. And I'll tell you something. People say, well, now that the Senate's decided, why is Herschel Walker so important? Very simple. If Herschel Walker doesn't win, then the Democrats can get rid of the Senate filibuster, which is very simple. The Senate filibuster says you need 60 senators to pass legislation. If they get rid of it, that means they can basically take away your Second Amendment with a sheer majority. So this is very, very important. I know it sounds in the weeds, but if you want to talk about your everyday life and your freedoms, it's important that Herschel Walker wins, because what I found in Washington, D.C. is when people realize that they're the only one, then they can't duck and hide when it comes to tough votes. When they can hide behind others, if the Democrats say we're going to get an extra one, we'd be in trouble.
I can't understand how people are electing people that have consistently done things against the America First people. Now, if you're not America First, are you America Last? How do people are actually I just seen a thing where people are actually acting like military signs. I think one of the social media platforms acting like military signs can be conflicted as a hate symbol. Where does this shit come from?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like we're just changing the words and abusing the meaning of everything, and I think that's really what the communists do. I mean, that's the whole point. You want to belittle the meaning of America and the idea of putting America first, so that basically everyone can steal and this country's destroyed the 270 plus year experiment.
I get blown away. I mean, every time me and you talk, I've already lived through a whole, I can't even, 3 lifetimes full of politics by the time we get back. Yeah, like you, election night, you sent me a message on election night. And
I know I sent you a message, and I thought it was going to be a great election night, and it was great in Florida overall, minus a couple.
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. It was great till 10 o'clock.
That's right.
At 10 o'clock, the world changed.
It did, and it was great in Florida. Not so good in some of the Southwest Florida local elections, but it was great in Florida. But man, it went haywire after 10 o'clock. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm sitting there watching everything look good. I'm already congratulating people, and then they turn around and lose.
I know. I deserve a little bit of blame there. I'll be honest. Tommy Doyle didn't update the website fast enough.
Well, Ford, I want to talk to you about one more thing while I got you on here. Talk to me about this Sam Bankman-Fried, and he's FTX. This is the biggest Ponzi scheme since Madoff, ain't it?
Hey, yeah. I mean, this is sort of Madoff, Enron, you name it. And I think that this is something that should be very worrisome to the average person, because the economy ain't great in ways to provide for our family, tuck money away. And there's a reason why cryptocurrency was on the fringe, particularly the FTX, because it was a Ponzi scheme. And, you got to be wary. Remember the old saying, it's what my grandfather used to say. If it's too good to be true or sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Ain't that's, I've all heard my father, my grandfather, and everybody. And I use this a lot. My dad always told me, be your own counsel. You need to think about the things, and no matter what nobody else says, and I go that with voting or whatever, I got to be my own counsel about what's best for old Smokin Joe. And that realistically, when you get each individual, what's going to be best for your home is what you better be putting out there on the ballot.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right. I think we get lost in that. I think part of it is that we need to be better citizens, to be totally honest with you. We need to pay more attention to what, not just our home or our neighborhood, but what that means for everybody else. And unfortunately, most people don't pay attention till about a month ago in elections. And unfortunately, they buy into peer pressure. I mean, if I were to bring it full circle, it's sort of like the cryptocurrency. Why was everybody buying crypto? Well, I saw Tom Brady doing it. He seems like a smart guy. I saw everyone doing it. And that peer pressure, I think, is why we're in this situation.
I never even heard of this Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, I know he goes by SBF on Twitter or whatever, but I've never really paid much attention to him because I'm old school. And, like you was talking about, people get afraid of putting it under a mattress, afraid to put it, they go into Bitcoin. Well, I'm going to just tell you, if I can't see something tangible, I don't think I'm investing no money in it.
Look, right there, that makes you about as smart as Warren Buffett, just right off the bat. So, that's a good thing. I mean, I know things are changing. I know the way we do business is changing, but it ain't changed that much just yet.
Right. Well, Ford, I appreciate you jumping. You got anything going on in the next week or two besides Thanksgiving?
Well, I got Thanksgiving with the family. We're going to go out to Las Vegas. Hopefully I don't lose all the wages while I'm out in Las Vegas, but it's America's playground. And then back to Florida. Look, I'll just tell you right now, this is the best time of year from now until May in Florida. And I'm going to tell you, I think that the rest of the country sadly has understood that as well.
Yep, you're right. Folks, that's Ford O'Connell, my host, the host of the show with me. Ford, thank you again for joining us. Look for me and Ford again next week. This is Cracker Culture, the podcast for real Floridians. Please like, share, and subscribe. The most important thing you can do for us is share this video. We love you, Florida. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Ford.
You got it, my friend. Till next week.